So, good morning, welcome. I'm very proud to welcome you for the second year in the Italian Geographical Society. I have invited colleagues of mine to discuss around and about themes connected to representation of power, and we are in the house of Italian geography, the most ancient society of geography in Italy, but we are very interested in this year in show you also the strong relationships between Italian Geographical Society and Sapienza University of Rome. In the same years when Italian Geographical Society moved to Rome, we realized also the creation of first geographical teaching in Sapienza University of Rome, and in some cases there are the same people who teach in Sapienza University of Rome and who work in Italian Geographical Society. So we are going to begin with a theoretical framework about the relation between space and memory, and cartography and power, and then there will be two speeches about the documents and cartographic evidence in Sapienza University of Rome and in Italian Geographical Society, with a little exhibition here also in Italian Geographical Society. You can see at the end of the speeches why geography and why cartography. Because the representation of space, as I said, is very strongly related to power, and this you have to imagine this relation background and forward. Through cartography, we can shaping space and memory going to the past, but also to shaping future, shaping scenarios. And so we are going to propose these subjects along these two directions. So I introduce you Marco Maggioli. He's a professor of geography in Milan. Also, he has studied and he worked several years in Sapienza University of Rome. He studies social geography and urban geography.
Okay.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome in Italy, welcome in Rome, and also welcome in Geographical Society. I'm also in a board of director in this society, and I want to just few words for my presentation. I'm a geographer, and as Riccardo said, I study especially social geography, and also I study above all on the field, field work in Africa, and something I said you some about something about relations between space, place, and memory in Africa, in colonization and post-colonial period, and I study also in Italy, in Rome, in particular. Relation between space and place in Rome, in some suburb and some villages that stay in Rome, and then I speak about this in few words. The thematic that we have to discuss today is not easy, because there's a lot of relation and a lot of different thematic related to the space, place, and memory. Also in geographical thought, that there's a lot of history that we can develop, and above all in Anglo-Saxon and American geography, but also in Italian and in French. We have a lot of theory about space and place, and also the relation between space and place. So I try to, so I organized this seminar, this discussion with us in 4 blocks, in 4 steps. Sorry. The first part is dedicated to the theory about space and place in geography. Only few elements for our for situate ourselves in front of space and place, and so we try to see what some author, some geographer said about space and place and memory. The second part is related to relation between space, place, and memory, with some example in Africa and Europe. I'm coordinating now, in this moment, a project related to the Museum of Slavery in Italy, in Europe, in particular in Liverpool and Nantes, and in Africa, in west coast of Africa, that is related to the memory of colonization and memory of slavery. We can see something about this. And the third part, I want to discuss only a few words about the process of territorialization that fascism and totalitarianism produce on the space, which are the element, the principal element, the main element that we can consider when we talk about totalitarianism, fascism in our particular case, and space, which are the element, the most important element. And then a little part related to this place of memory as public spaces, okay? So we can start, sorry. We can start with simple elements that is clear. It's okay for you? The first element is that in generic and general sense, we can consider a place in geographical perspective or in generic way in two different way. In a generic sense, a place, as you can see, is a geographical locale of any size of configuration that is comparable with, in meaning, with region or in location or area. Probably when we talk about place, we use in the same sense the concept of region, area, or location to talk about place or space. In geographical perspective and in humanities in general, the concept of place is very different, because we have a different definition about place, but place is sometimes defined as a human route transformation of part of a surface, earth surface, or of existing and differentiated places. So we have a difference between the concept of place when in generic and general sense, and then we talk in a geographical perspective. In most of human geography, the concept of place, as you can see, is an incessant state of becoming. So the place is continually renewed, continually restructured, continually used. So the second point, you can see two authors here. The first one is Doreen Massey. She's a social geographer. And the second one is also a geographer, that is David Harvey, that wrote two books in 1989. David Harvey, The Condition of Postmodernity, and Doreen Massey wrote an article titled A Global Sense of Place, where both describe place as a central concept in human geography in general, and cultural geography in particular. But there also been, said Doreen Massey and also David Harvey, that the concept of place is also considered now also in economic perspective, because, as you probably know, we have a lot of relation on the space, in geographical space, between different places that stay on different locations in the world. So we have probably the first thing that we can underline, that exists a very different conceptualization about space and place, because while the place is richly suggestive of meaning and attachment, the space is more generally associated with abstraction and action. So we have a place here, now, in this moment, with this building. And then we have a space where we can, for example, consider the distance on Euclidean space, the distance between this point, this place, and other place in Rome. So the place could be defined as a portion of space that has accumulated particular meanings at both the level of the individual and the social. So we have a place is a space where we have some memories, for example, or some meanings in general that are at the level of single person. For example, for Marco, for me, this place have a lot of meanings, and for the social, probably the sense of this place is completely different. One of the most important geographers that discuss about this is an American geographer, that is Ifutwan, and when in 1976, and then we said something about this, but in general we can see that for Ifutwan, a place is a field of care and center of meaning. Okay, for Ifutwan in this book, probably I have after this book. okay, in 2 books, in Space and Place and in Topophilia, a study of environmental perception, attitude, and values, Ethiopian, explain to kind of the sense of place that we have in our life. Okay, so we can go. So the place is not a location for geographical thought. Is not only a location, is not only the phenomenological ground for geography, but also is an irreducible component of human experience. So a fundamental component of human experience, without which human experience itself could not be constituted and interpreted. So it's not only a location. We can have a location or different location, as you can see in this map of this film that probably you know. That is Accattone by Pierpaolo Pasolini, but we have not only the place where the people, where the film is played, but we have a real place where Accattone and the film is played. Okay, the real and the map, the real and the location. Place is different. Between is different from location. So we can say very briefly we have a different theory about space and place and memory, especially in British and American geographies. We have 3 books very important for us. The first one is The Betweenness of Place by Nicholas Entrikin. He's a professor at University College of Los Angeles. This in 1991. The second that I choose, in my opinion, is Place, Culture and Representation by James Duncan and David Leigh, by University of Cambridge and British Columbia. British Columbia is David Leigh and Cambridge is James Duncan. And the third book that you can see, you can read if you want, is by Tim Cresswell that he teach at the University of Edinburgh. The title is Place, A Short Introduction. This is our friend James Entrikin, Nicholas Entrikin. Only a few words about this book. Place presents itself to us a condition, said Entrikin, a condition of human experience. As an agent in the world, we are always in place. We stay in place, much as we are always in culture. So place and culture are fundamental element of our life. For this reason, said Entrikin, our relation to place and culture become elements in the construction of our individual and collective identities. Second book is Place, Culture and Representation, 1993, James Duncan and David Leigh are editors of this book. There's a lot of contribution, a lot of article in this book, but only in this case a few words about this. When we write of our geographies, we are not just representing some reality, we are creating meaning. So when we talk with Riccardo, Professor Morri, we discuss a lot about this, and we study and make some research about this. When we talk about our geography, also when we talk about ourselves and our geography, we construct the meanings of our body on the space. So the third author is our friend Tim Cresswell. Plays a short introduction, and 2004 Tim Cresswell said, in this case a few words, that human geography is the study of places. It's of course many other things, but it's on an intuitive level a discipline which has a place as not of its principal object of study. In the city, for example, in every city, in Rome, as in Berlin or in London or in New York, we have different creation of places. So we have different creation of meaning on the space. On the top you have Ethiopian, 1974, 1976, two important books that I said before: Topophilia, Study of Environmental Perception, Attitude and Values, and the second one in 1976, Space and Place, the perspective of experience. And the second professor is Edoardo Ralph. That is, there's a very, very good blog organized by Edoardo Ralph that you can see on internet, and then I give you the address you can consult, that write in 1976 very important book that named Place and Placeness. Very shortly, Uffutuan said that through human perception and experience, we got to know the world through the place, the first thing, so we can know the world starting to the place. The term topophilia was developed by Uffutuan to refer the affective bond between people and space. And this bond, this sense of attachment, it's fundamental for us, for the idea of place, a field of care. So the place is a field of care. And so the last thematic that we can develop, the comparison between space and place, and so the concept of a sense of place as an open arena of action and movement of people, while place is about stopping, resting, and becoming involved. While space, said Uffutuan, is amenable to the abstraction of spatial science and economic rationality, place, on the contrary, is amenable to discussion of things such as value and belonging. So the first element that we can consider in our reflection, in our thinking, in our discussion, that is, place is a significant center of our immediate experiences, as Uffutuan said. Very briefly, in Edoardo Ralph's perspective, there's a distinction between authentic but we say that we doesn't exist a place that is authentic, authentic place and inauthentic places. And so, in briefly, the first part we can consider this element, in my opinion, place as a subjectively sensed and experienced phenomenon. The second element plays as not only the phenomenological ground for geography, but also a fundamental component of human experience, without which human experience could not be constituted and interpreted. And the third, such experience include perception of place, sense of place, human dwelling, and memories of place. For the concept of space, we can do an archaeology discussion about the concept of place in geographical thought, or also in geographical, or not in geographical, and humanistic science, around the concept of space and relation with social thought, but only on a book that is by Robert Sack, where geographical space, said Sack, is seen and evaluated in different way at different time in different cultures. So we have the concept of space in different time is different between another period, and we have another concept of a space in different culture. For example, I study, as I said, in Africa, we have a different concept of space in Africa. For example, the mobility of people in Africa is very different between the mobility that we have in our European context. What about memory? So also in this case, is very difficult to synthesize some concept, but only 3 books also in this case. The first one, probably you know, Maurice Olbach's on collective memory. He's a philosopher and sociologist, but for us it is important in this book on collective memory. Is 1941, that for Maurice Olbach's activity, including, said Olbach's, commemorative rituals, storytelling, place naming, and accumulation display of relics, triggers, and social memory. And so for me and for us, I believe also with Professor Morri, is important of anchoring this memory in spatial imaginary and physical artifact, arguing that social memory endure best when there is a double focus on physical object. So in material reality, such, for example, a monument or a statue as a physical element. And also is important for us in this perspective, memory in a spatial imaginary as a symbolic, a symbol, or something of a spiritual significance. So said Maurice Olbach that we have shared by the group with social. We can share with other people our relation with memory and place. The second author that is used also in geographical perspective is another French scholar, that is Pierre Nora, 3-volume published and part in English translation as a realm of memory. Lieu des mémoires, said Pierre Nora, is a significant entity, whether material or non-material in nature, which by dint of human will or the work of time has become a symbolic element of the memorial heritage of any community. So the third author, that is a philosopher, as you probably know, is Paul Ricoeur, that is used also in a geographical perspective, and in particular there's a chapter number 3 in this work, in this book, very important, Memory, History and Forgetting, that in Italian is La memoria, la storia e l'oblio, français, la mémoire, l'histoire et l'oubli. In chapter 3 you can find some discussion, some thematic relate to personal relation between personal memory and the collective memory. So the question that I pose to myself, when we can talk about a memory that is embodied on the space. How can memory become part of public space? So the first element, because I study this in this moment and in different years that I study that element. The first example that we can find is related, as I said, in relation to the slavery, which is the memory of slavery and which is the memory of colonization in Europe and also in Africa. We have some example. We can find different examples around the world, but for example, we have an example of public space and memory of slavery in South Africa, in Cape Town, where on the square, for example, we have on the public space, we have memory embedded in this place. Or in the second case that you can find in the picture in New York, the Ark of Return. But also we have some different example in Africa. I visit this place in Dakar, in Senegal, where there's a museum of Gorée, that is an island that stay in front of city of Dakar, where there's a freedom monument, la Maison des Esclaves de Gorée. Or also we can have some different example. I have a researcher that now study in Liverpool about and study this museum, the museum, International Slavery Museum in Liverpool. And so we have two different point of view. The point of view related to the slavery that in African cities and the power in African city produce around memory of slavery, and then we have another point of view that is the point of view of European culture in relation to slavery. This is the first example, as I said before, in Liverpool. The second, the second example is in Nantes, le Mémorial de l'Abolition de l'Esclavage, memorial to the abolition of slavery, that is located in Nantes, in France, and Liverpool and Nantes. I don't know if there's some French. Okay, where you come from? Yeah, okay. And there's also some by Liverpool or by Great Britain. I don't know if there's someone of you come from. Where you come from? You study in England. Okay. And so it's interesting to see two different point of view in a relation, for example, to the memory and the space and place in Europe. It is different, that memory and the concept of space that we can have in other countries. So the most important thing for us, for geographers, is the differentiation of space and differentiation of a point of view on the space and place. So the third part, the final part, I want to dedicate to relation between fascism and territorialization. I don't want to discuss with you the theory about territorialization, but we can see three main points important for us, that the territorialization of fascism is built around three, in my opinion, three most important elements. The first one is denomination. I don't know if in English is correct, but the name that we use, the linguistic control that fascism produce on the space. We have probably you have seen different name of place that are new name that fascism has a lot of totalitarianism produce. For example, Littoria, that now is named Latina, that is a province of Rome, or Sabaudia, that is a place near the sea, or the name of street that, for example, during fascism, there's a new name respect the order that always exists. So between 1927 and 1929, more than 1,000 names of municipalities was changed by law during the fascism. The second element, and probably also you have seen that is a process that we name reification. So the construction of a geographical object on the space. This is a way through which fascism produces a material control on the space. We cited yet a monument reclamation land, we said before, or city, new town. And so we have a production of space, as Lefebvre said. Production of space, and so a construction, I repeat, of the geographical object on the space that produce, for example, a material and political control. Political control that is produced also in the third block that you can see in this slide. Fascism produces a spatial organization. So define boundaries and define at different scale these boundaries, and so produce a very strictly and very important political control between, for example, between 1923 and 1927, there's I don't remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new province, Trieste, Istria, Zara, Trento, Ionio, e La Spezia. Trieste, Istria, Zara on the east boundaries of Italy, and so we can have a scale of relation with the other countries. And during the 1976, we have 17 new municipalities will be established. You can see Aosta, Matera, Nuoro, Pescara, Pistoia, Vercelli, etc. And the province of Caserta was abolished. So we have a total control in a symbolic point of view with the name. We have a control material, in material sense, with the reification, with the construction of something on the space. And then we have a political and a social control in relation to the boundaries and in relation to the new province, new delimitation in administrative sense on the Italian space. So we have different scale of action of totalitarianism in the control of space and place. So with Riccardo, we discuss a lot about this topic, and then I finish my presentation. We have two different levels of colonization in fascism perspective. An external and international colonization, as we said, colony that Italy produced in Africa, for example. But we have also internal colonization. So we have a global scale and a local scale. And this produces not only a general colonization, but also hegemony and coercion. As you know, the ventennio, only few words and only few images. The first one probably you know, the second you know absolutely. The marks, no, that in Italy cities or in Rome in particular produce the ventennio. That so produce different marks in urban project, individual buildings, monument, plaque, street name, as we said. And is interesting for us, for geography, that note that doesn't exist in Italy, a geography of fascism, for example. We don't have a book about this topic. We have here another example of mark that we can find also in Rome. This is a very important cinema that is, I don't know if you know the player Nanni Moretti. This is the cinema of Nanni Moretti, but it is established in dopolavoro dei monopoli, I don't know in English, but it is a social fascist institution. Well, you can see, I don't know if it's possible for you. Yes, probably. We have eagle, mosaic, decoration, and different elements that remember in memory the fascist period. So we have other example. So we have a different example. This is I divide my life between Milan and Rome. This is an image of Central Station in Milan, platform 21. There's a place where Jewish and political prisoners were deported from Milan to the camp. And so we have also, you can find in this address a very interesting project related to the San Lorenzo, that is university district near Sapienza, where there's maps and a narrative related to the memory of anti-fascism. And you can find also memory with the interview or with something else. The project is named Project Slum, San Lorenzo Urban Memory Museum, and you can find the address and you can consult if you want. So we said that fascism is a process of internal colonization. We have here internal migration flow on your left. In 1930, you can see that the flow are direct to the Lazio, and in particular in Latina and Agropontino. We say some image after. And then we have internal migration flow in 1950. There's an error here, sorry. Where the flow are direct on the north Italy. So we have, as we said, a process of reification. This is an example. The source is Laboratorio Geografico of the Department of Literature and Culture. You can visit this archive if you want some, probably if you want some image or something else. So this is Sabaudia in the church that you can see. That is the first form of control of space, was completed in 1935. So I have a different thing. We have a different scale. The land reclamation, and we have here the land reclamation maps in 1939. So it's a different scale, in urban scale and in regional scale. As you know, c'è un puntatore? C'è un puntatore? No. Okay, you can see. I selected for you the new town that are established. The new town that are established and constructed during this period. And so the land reformation, the movement of people, and the construction of a new town are the project in this case. And so we have different image in the Sabaudia or Pontinia. The last thing and the last element that is this process that is at regional level. We have also a political control of space also at urban level, at urban scale. This example is a study that with Professor Morri and other colleagues, we study about the relation between fascism and new settlement in Rome. We have also here, you can see the hamlets or borgate, I don't know in English the translation, and we study in particularly this borgata. And only few elements, this new village in Rome was built a distance from the city center. And the second element for us very important, that near this new village there's a forte, I don't know in English, but military control in every place that you can find in this map. And also the same, probably I have a picture. So this is a borgata, this is a Santa Maria del Soccorso. You can see the spatial delimitation. This is a different map, a different scale, where you can see the geometrical approach to the space during the fascism period. This is a building, an house. Sorry. Want to see? Okay. And so this is the hamlets that we study, Borgata Santa Maria del Soccorso, now named Tiburtino Terzo, but important is that near this place, these hamlets, you can see in the green round military fort, that name Forte Tiburtino, that was built between this period, and then we use also with a PAI, that Police of African Italy, that is located here during the fascism, with the objective to control spatially and military this area. So we have the same element that we can see, that we have seen also in Sabaudia or in Littoria, now Latina. The architectural element are the same. Probably you discuss this topic in your summer school. And so the some final remark that I hope, and I want to give you. The first one is that the place in our approach is a condition of human experience. The relationship between space, place, and memory are very close and are evident in all society, in all cultures, obviously. The third element that I discuss is fascism as an agent of the territorialization of geographical spaces through the process of denomination, reification, and spatial organization. Fourth element, during fascism, geographical space represent the space of conquista, I don't remember, the conquest of and colonization, both internal and external. And places, especially in Rome, are the main space where the power of the fascism state is manifested, is product. So I have prepared for you a short bibliography, a short books, or only geographical books or article that you can study. You can see, for example, a very interesting Caprotti, Caprotti, that is a geographer, and you can find in open access this article. If you want, you can study. So for me, it's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marco. And so I think it's important to be aware that the places are not objective realities, and so we can understand why totalitarianism make big efforts to produce spaces and places. I mean that it's very important, in my opinion, what Marco, Professor Maggioli highlighted, that serial events, phenomena, do not just happen, but they take place. This is very relevant from not only from a geographical point of view. One of the powerful ways both to build and to shape a sense of belonging and attachment is the geographical code. In other words, the cartography. And so Professor Edoardo Boria, that is a political and economic geography that who teaches in political science faculty in Sapienza University of Rome, is going to tell us how through cartography it's possible to create knowledge of unknown places, for example, to justify a colonization or an invasion. So, thank you, Edoardo.
Thank you, Riccardo. Can you hear me well? Okay.
Yes.
So I go on. It's a pleasure for me to take part in this summer school. Well, it's a pity not to be there with you, but it is very important to be cautious with this coronavirus. And well, at least online classes. Well, online classes are not as productive as face-to-face classes. However, they have at least one advantage, and that's that I do not have to wear a mask, and that's very uncomfortable. Your summer school is about totalitarianism, and that's why I'm going to talk about cartography's power through the case of Italian fascism, with two case studies. Italian fascist cartography is very interesting because it highlights very well the many links between power and cartography. I have to share my presentation. Yes, here we are. Can you see it?
See.
Okay, so just a very quick geopolitical framework of those years. Saying that the Italian territorial ambitions, they started before fascism went to power. Fascism went to power in 1922, but as you can see in this map, Italian occupation of Turkey started earlier. Italy had, at the end of the First World War, a great opportunity, and that was the crisis, the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire ruled over East and South Mediterranean, but was in crisis at the beginning of the 20th century. And so Italy could occupy some regions, even a part of Anatolia, and the green part of Anatolia was occupied by Italy between 1991 and 1922. But Italy conquered also other colonies, other former Ottoman colonies, like Libya, for example. And Italy ruled Libya for 30 years. And even some Greek islands, such as Rhodes, was occupied by Italy. And all these happened before fascism, as I said, came to power. The fascist regime consolidated the existing possessions and extended them by adding some new regions, such as Albania in 1938 and Ethiopia in 1936. I will go back to Ethiopia later. The geographical idea behind this expansionistic plan was that the Mediterranean was a unitary strategic quadrant, and maps represented it accordingly. Why am I showing you this map? Because it is almost rare nowadays to find in school atlases maps with title Mare Mediterraneo, Mediterranean Sea. You have whether Europe or Africa, not what's in the middle. This was the result of a specific view which was developed in fascist times, looking at the Mediterranean not as a barrier between Europe and Africa, rather as a unitary basin. So the Mediterranean was a strategically homogeneous area. Homogeneous from the historical point of view, from the geographical point of view, and even from the cultural point of view. This is another map, Mediterranean state balance. Is this title here. And these maps were common at that time. Here we have something which is not far from where you are now, and it's still there. Talking about heritage, these marble tablets are fixed to the back of the Basilica of Maxentius, are still there. You cannot see them now because they are covered by the works of the new tube line. But anyway, there are some big photos of these marble tablets. They are in the street, as Marco was talking before about street names. This street, which is the street just in front when you go out from the Colosseo subway station, you are in Via dei Fori Imperiali. The name at that time was Via dell'Impero. Well, meaning Empire Street. Well, it is remarkable to note that the empires were both the ancient Roman Empire and the fascist empire. After the conquest of Ethiopia in 1936, fascism established the empire in connection with the ancient Rome, and which was celebrated by the regime in search of links to a glorious past. So the fascist regime considered itself the heir of the ancient Roman Empire, and that's why the name of the street, Via dei Fori Imperiali, because it reminds of the old Roman Empire and of the new fascist empire, while today Via dell'Impero reminds of the only the old one. These marble tablets made up a monumental cartographic display of 5 very large tablets. In this photo, you can see 3 of them. but there are two more here on the left. These tablets were nearly 5 square meters each. The first 4 tablets are dedicated to the Roman Empire. They still illustrate the expansion of Rome, starting from the first tablet, which is here on the left, where there is the old tablet is black, apart one small white dot in correspondence to Rome. And then this white space becomes bigger and bigger until it reaches the maximum extent of the Roman Empire. And this is the maximum extent of the Roman Empire, the table here in the middle. That was the whole Mediterranean basin, most of continental Europe, most of the British Islands, and to the east till the Persian Gulf, till Mesopotamia. The last tablet, the 5th tablet, is even larger and was added after the conquest of Ethiopia to glorify the new fascist empire. These tablets were used as backdrop for the frequent military parades held along that road. So this cartography served as a stage for political rituals. A major point of this fascist view of the Mediterranean as a unitary basin, as I said, was the concept of Mare Nostrum, which is a Latin expression meaning our sea. The fascist rhetoric aggressive used the myth of Mare Nostrum and spread it through every possible mean of communication. I show you some of them. Here is a cover of a primary school report card from the fascist period with this writing Mare Nostrum in the middle. Another one is this map, which comes from the library of the Società Geografica Italiana, the place where you stay. And the writing here, this is the dictator Mussolini, and in the writing here is written, the 20th century must have Rome at the center of Latin civilization, dominator of the Mediterranean. Another example here, another map of the Mediterranean basin coming from the book Mare Nostrum of 1938. So the basic idea was that Mediterranean had to be dominated by Italy. And this was for historical reasons, for geographical reasons, for demographical reasons. This idea, of course, produced hostility towards other great powers, such as England, for example. This is a German map, but a map of the same kind were published in Italy too. And the title is England, the Master of the Mediterranean Sea. England was a major sea power and dominator of the Mediterranean, although geographically external to the Mediterranean. But hostility was even against France. This is a fascist propaganda poster. Bizerta is a northernmost city in Africa, in French colony Tunisia. Tunisia was French at that time. Bizerta is in French hands is a pistol aimed at Sicily. So you know how it ended, the story. I mean, This is a funny satirical British propaganda issued in Portugal of the decline of the Roman Empire, the situation in 1939 and the situation in 1941. Now I have a second case study, and it deals with the cartography of the Ethiopian borders. It offers a clear example of persuasive cartography. It concerns, as I said, the borders of Ethiopia and of the Horn of Africa, which is the region, the eastern region of Africa. I'm going to show you how Italian atlases represented these borders in the 30s. No, I have to do this. Okay. Well, there are maps clearly manipulated for purposes of political propaganda, such as this one, coming from German publication of the 30s. But even seemingly innocent maps can be deceptive. Here is the Horn of Africa, as I said, the eastern region of Africa. And it looks like a neutral and basic map. It comes from a school atlas, which was at that time the most popular school atlas, Atlante de Agostini. This case study deals with the borders of the Horn of Africa as representing Italian atlas in the 30s. And as I said, it offers a clear example of a geopolitical narrative delivered through mapping. Well, let's start from 1927. Ethiopia was a sovereign state. All of Ethiopia's borders in most Italian atlases are represented with a solid line. You can see it here, this solid line, including the borders with Eritrea and Somaliland, which were Italian colonies. This is Somaliland, and this is Eritrea in the north. In the atlas published by De Agostini, however, the border between Ethiopia and Italian Somaliland is represented by a dashed line, implying an uncertain border, like here inside this green box. In 1931, Ethiopia is still a sovereign state, but in this De Agostini atlas, De Agostini was the main publisher, the main cartographic publisher at that time. In 1931, a section of the border between Ethiopia and Italian Somaliland is still dashed. In the following year, 1932, Ethiopia is still a sovereign state, but what happens in the atlas? We are following the same atlas in changing edition. Every year they used to publish a new edition. The entire border between Ethiopia and Italian Somaliland is now dashed, not just part of it, the entire border. In 1933, Ethiopia is still a sovereign state, but in the new edition, the border between Ethiopia and Italian Somaliland has disappeared, as you can see here. In that same year, part of the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea, we are now on the northern border of Ethiopia. Here is Ethiopia, and here on the Red Sea is Eritrea. This border was clearly depicted until 1932, but now in 1933 it disappears, part of the border. And in that same edition, the name Ethiopia disappears from the title of the map. The title of the map is now Eritrea, Somalia, and bordering countries, while in 1932 the title was Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia. So Ethiopia disappears, is no more on the title. It's like if Ethiopia was disappearing as a country, as a sovereign country. This is the story. In October 1933, Italy invades Ethiopia, and in May 1936, Italy occupies Ethiopia, conquered Ethiopia. But the maps we have seen so far have been published before this occupation. Although they were deleting borders before Italian invasion. In May 1936, Ethiopia became part of Italian East Africa, and indeed, in our De Agostini Atlas, all state borders between Ethiopia and Eritrea and Somaliland are eliminated. However, new internal borders appear, imposed by the occupying power, that is Italy. And the plate has a new title. You remember the last name was Eritrea, Somaliland, and bordering countries. The original name was Ethiopia, Somalia, and Eritrea, but now it becomes Africa Orientale Italiana, Italian Oriental Africa. But what did other private cartographic publishers do? Because of course we can, looking at these maps, we can talk about propaganda maps. So let's see what other private cartographic publishers were doing. As early as 1928, some atlases marked the border between Ethiopia and Somaliland with a dashed line, such as this one by Paravia, which was another important publisher house of that period. This is an atlas by Italgeo. Here the border between Ethiopia and Somaliland seems rubbed out, as you can see here. Here another publisher, the border between Ethiopia and Somaliland and part of the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea no longer appear. 1935, before the Italian invasion. The same phenomenon can be observed here with another publisher and no borders. But not all cartographers make the same choices. In this map, published shortly before the invasion, the borders are still clearly evident. The name of the publisher was Vallardi, and as you can see here, the northern border between Ethiopia and Eritrea is still there, as well as the southern border between Ethiopia and Somaliland. So much of Italian cartography omitted the borders of Ethiopia prior to the invasion of that country. Rather than reflecting actual political reality, these atlases presented the aspirations of the regime as reality, thereby contributing to the creation of a distorted representation in the collective imaginary, and ultimately to the legitimations of actions later taken by the regime. So the question now is, were those private cartographic publishing houses subject to political pressures, or did they comply with the wishes of the regime of their own free will? In other words, were those maps directly commissioned by the regime? Were they the result of direct or indirect pressure by political power? Or option C, they were the result of willing subservience on the part of the publishers towards the regime. Well, the answer is C. The answer is C. So we can conclude that maps reflect collective geographical imagination and that maps encourage to conceive new spatial situations and stimulate action, stimulate political action, such as the invasion of the country of Ethiopia. A map is worth 10,000 words. That's my last slide. As my final words, I can say that there are clear links, but a complex relationships between the ruling political class and the publishing houses producing cartography at that time. But again, a map is worth 10,000 words. It can be a tool of a propaganda tool, but this relation between cartography and propaganda is much more complex than we can imagine. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening, of course.
Thank you very much, Edoardo. Thank you, for Professor Boria. So now we are going to general perspective to a particular two particular case of studies. Why? Because Italian Geographical Society and Sapienza University of Rome were the places in that period where geographical knowledge as constructed, where it is built, and from 2 points of views. About the drawings of cartography and the representation of knowledge of territories, and also about teaching geography, because for totalitarianism it's very important the process of to shape public knowledge. So we consider interesting for you to show the relations and the comparison between documents in Sapienza University of Rome, and then finally evidences of that period in Italian Geographical Society. Now there's the speech of Benedetta, Scavoni, and Epifania Grippo. Benedetta Scavoni has a master's degree in geography in Sapienza University of Rome, and she's studying the evidence document in our department, in our institute, together to Epifania Grippo. Thank you, Benedetta.
Thank you, Professor. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this brief introduction to the Geographical Sapienza Heritage. Can you hear me clearly?
Sì.
Thank you. Preserved, collected in the library of the geographical section in our departments, the departments of letters and modern cultures in Sapienza. As Professor Morri said before, I worked together with my colleague Epifania Grippo, who sends her regards, and sorry for not being with you today right there. So I'll share with you my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so the assets we are going to deal with together today have been collected in the former Cabinet of Geography at the Royal University of Rome since 1876 for what? For teaching and for scientific purposes. So the assets are not catalogued except for the books and for some cartographies, and the studies in progress aim at first to favor the emergence of our possession in Sapienza. At the same time, some detailed studies have been launched on many specific collection and section, as we will see together today, and enhancement projects have been carried out. So our heritage is made up today of more than 10,000 cartographies, 5,000 photographic plates, relief models, globes, wall maps, inventories, scientific and teaching assets, but also testimonies, intangible materials like testimonies, currents of thought, teachings that have been developed in Sapienza since the first chair of geography was established almost 150 years ago. So among the owned cartographies, a qualitatively and quantitatively relevant section is dedicated to the African continent. And for this reason, that's why we started to study this section. But let me make a necessary premise. This dissertation today is a survey of, is the result of a survey which is waiting to be the subject of a more structured research, and to refer to our African cartography, we cannot use the term fund because it doesn't appear as a well-defined special collection and catalogued as such in our library. It's rather than a study section, and we are therefore more aware of this continent having been explored, this section as a pilot project of internships that will that dealt with the reconnaissance and metadating. So today, together, we are going to see three kinds of assets. As you can see on the left side of this slide, we are going to see maps, atlases, and school books referred to the Italian colonial period in Africa. So you might be able to distinguish these three categories better by following these three chosen colors. So orange, blue, and red for school books. But during our survey, we realized actually that we came across other three categories that you can see at the on the right. And so let me clarify better. While you are observing a map during this review today, you might be able to distinguish three categories at the same time that are not separate from each other, but intersect along the entire path. So while you are observing a map, you are supposed to distinguish the area represented in that map, but also the periods of time to which the production of that map dates back. And finally, but not finally, the cartographic producer institute that produced that map you are observing. Our heritage mostly focuses on the fascist period. We have more than 220 maps and mainly concerns Italian East Africa in the Horn of Africa and the historical regions of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica, later merged into Italian Libya since 1934. So since the end of the 19th century, it was on these territories that Italian interests focused, Italian fascist interests focused later, driven up by the colonial pretensions of post-unification governments, Italian post-unification governments, to keep up with the other European powers that had already colonized overseas lands for some time. So cartographic production served at a glance to make the Italian colonial project known even to a wider audience than a specific one. So please take a look at this Paravia map on the left side of this slide that was compiled by Roberto Almagià at the peak of the Italian colonial expansion in Africa. And we can distinguish the colonies pink colored, like the homeland, Italy. But not only that, because at the bottom of this map, we can observe 4 large-scale paths that represents the situation in that period, and above all, one is dedicated. This one is dedicated to the illustration of the military of the Italian military operations for the conquest of Ethiopia in 1936. And in this sense, here we can observe an example of some produced cartographies in different periods of time. So the pre-fascism before 1922, the fascism period, where the maps produced by the Ministry of the Colonies and by Edoardo, as we will see after, increases significantly, and the period after the Second World War. And here there is some cartographic institutes that produced the maps we collect in our library in Sapienza. And in this sense, the university had played an important role in endorsing the colonial enterprise, providing scientific basis like justification and cartographic materials. And Roberto Almagià was a key figure in this sense because he endorsed the colonial enterprise until the promulgation of the racial laws in 1938 in Italy by Mussolini. Then he became a victim of that fascist regime he worked because he was a Jewish professor. And the large quantity of African maps in our possession is therefore motivated by scientific interest, like discovering new lands and the development of cartography as a technique, but also by political, commercial, and social affairs. We are looking at video realized by the reconnaissance of our possession in Sapienza. So towards the end of the 19th century, a high level of Italian cartographic production began, which finally made up for the need to use foreign and mainly German, as Professor Boria said before, maps in both teaching and scientific research. So the development of the geographic discipline and cartographic techniques and the particular historical moment that steeped in a strong patriotism at that time, aimed at both the construction of a an idea of homeland, of Italy like homeland among the masses, and the conveyance of the colonial experience, the colonial project. And it's necessary thus to start our review from the 19th century period, as we can better understand the later cartography, which keeps pace with the evolution of the human history, but, and this is very important, lags behind in the process of public or social legitimization of the geographical discipline. So some maps of Africa drawn up by Guido Cora, a central figure of this transitional period from the foreign cartographic production, mainly German, as we said before, to Italian production, belong to the late 19th century. So Guido Cora is another important figure among the professors who contributed to build our possession in Sapienza, because he trained in Germany before, and later he came to Italy, where he was for a short period a lecturer in Sapienza, and he launched his geographical journal, one of the most important of that time, Cosmos, and founded later his own cartographic producer institute under his name. And he started later to collaborate with some of the most important Italian publishing houses like Paravia. So the first map we see here today concerning the Italian expedition to Gala and Somali regions was drawn up by Cora in 1876. And as we can read here in the description of this map, this special map served as a basis for the Italian expedition to Equatorial Africa. So clearly, cartography here seems to be a tool for an Italian expedition, finalized to what? To know these territories better, for sure, but also, and above all, to conquer them with knowledge. So we can talk about territorialization, as Professor Maggioli said in his review before, and then to politically subjugate them to Italian government. Also by Guido Cora is this special map of the Regency of Tunis, dated back in 1881, and its neighboring regions. So while the finished product, you can observe it right here, is also collected in the National Library of France, a proof without coloring, this one, is kept in our library in Sapienza with a handwritten indication by the author himself. So I'll translate this indication for you. It's a proof without tinting and coloring, missing the blue tinting, and it serves as a sample for the quality and the size of this map, and it's signed by Guido Cora himself. So these two maps you are observing right here belong to the Della Vedova legacy, with dedication by Professor Guido Cora to Professor Giuseppe Della Vedova, and it's a clear proof, an important testimony to rebuild our possession in Sapienza, and the professors' profiles who built this heritage in Sapienza. Please keep in mind that Giuseppe Della Vedova was the first professor who obtained in Sapienza the first chair of geography more than 150 years ago. So still pertaining of the regency of Tunis is this oldest map we collect in our library. It's from 1857 and it's drawn up by Colonel Antoine Lucien Blondel. Blondel is another key figure in the politics and geography duo, as we can say it. He was an engineer and a geographer, and at the same time he was a military man. He became head of cabinet to the Minister of the French Minister of War in 1851, and at the same time he was the colonel of the General Staff. And all this to demonstrate the sometimes uncovered and sometimes recurring close links between that I said before, between geography and cartography and politics. But why such interest for the regency of Tunis? Tunis was never under Italian control, actually, despite the fact that Italian post-unification governments aimed to incorporate it into the Kingdom of Italy. Until the Treaty of Bardo, signed in 1881, the Husainids ruled there in Tunisia, and with that Treaty of Bardo in 1881, Tunisia became a French protectorate, as Professor Boria said before. So, however, it's worth remembering that the Italian governments and the Italian presence in Tunisia have been well established both commercially and culturally for centuries. And even with the arrival of the French with the Treaty of Bardo in 1881, and despite a climate of suspicious and some difficulties, Italians were granted a special status that even allowed citizenship to be handed down from father to son. So geographically very close, Italy and Tunisia have therefore always had a close relationship. So that's why maybe cartography and some of the most important cartographers has certainly had a strong interest to represent that strip, this prosperous strip of Africa. So atlases, like this one shown in this slide, represents another important nucleus of our review over the Sapienza heritage. So among the atlases in our possessions, we focus today our attention on the Atlas of Africa, published in Bergamo in 1905 by Istituto Italiano d'Arti Grafiche. So in this atlas, there is a paragraph entitled Civilization in Africa that outlines the history of the African people. So I can read here, this history is little known, but it was a mistaken opinion that the continent was populated by true savages. It's worth recalling here how the prejudice which assigns the destiny and function of civilization to a race as its exclusive privilege does not hold scientifically. That therefore civilizing means promoting production, educating, making people live better, not suppressing them. So please keep your attention to this line, not suppressing them. So maybe there is an alternative and interesting point of view right here in this atlas, but at the same time in this atlas there is they wonders why such late colonization of this continent, because they said this continent has a elephantine morphology. So after all, there is the common opinion in this atlas as well. And in the intro of the atlas, we can read Opera Originale Italiana. That means Italian original work dedicated to businessmen, politicians, military circles, educational institutes, and to all educated people. So, but does Opera Originale Italiana mean? It means that it means that the proof of the pride of the newborn Italian cartographic production instead of the German production as well. And in John Scott Kelty's review dated back in 1886, John Kelty was best known for his work with the Royal Geographic Society in London. That refers to this Italian production, cartographic production, naming in this lines Professor Della Vedova and Professor Guido Cora of Turin and Malfatti of Florence, etc., with other geographers. And he said not only the Italian production, but in the matter of relief maps, I'm reading here, of relief maps, Italian publishers are perhaps the most enterprising in Europe. In the later period, cartographic production concerning Africa was mainly produced by the Italian Ministry of Colonies. And the main author who worked with that ministry and maybe the bridging figure between the pre-fascist and fascist periods is Achille Dardano. Achille Dardano was an active cartographer and geographer at the Ministry of Colonies since 1914. And the Ministry of Colonies was founded in 1912 with a jurisdiction over the colonial possession of the Kingdom of Italy in Africa. And under the name of the Ministry of Colonies, we possesses about 25 maps. And in 1937, this ministry changed its name into Ministry of Italian Africa, and under this new name, we possess several maps too. So let me share with you a curiosity. The new ministry was supposed to have new headquarters in Rome, in Viale delle Terme di Caracalla, but the building was never used by this ministry because the headquarters was completed only a year before the Ministry of Italian Africa was abolished in 1953. So since then it became the Italian headquarters of FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. By Dardano is the special map concerning on your left side the telegraphic and the radiotelegraphic communication of between the homeland Italy and its colonies. It's in 1923, and in the right this map has a logistical theme. Like the other map you can see on the right side of this slide. The logistical theme of these two maps were important for an utilitarian function of cartography. So it's very relevant practical information in the connections of what was considered the homeland and its father colonies in Africa. So we can see right here the same utilitarian purposes in this thematic map of Assicurazioni Generali Venezia, one of the most important Italian insurance of that time, and maybe the first one today and the third in Europe, based also in Mogadiscio. And about Mogadiscio, we possess in our library a photographic plate. You can see right here. The date is unknown, but in this plate we can observe some people walking on the dock, maybe in the Mogadishu city, and behind them we can distinguish an Italian sign, an Italian commercial sign by Fratelli Biazzo. This plate is referred to or rather those 5,000 photographic plates we are studying at Sapienza University under the view of Sandra Leonardi. And this map, the others map, means that we are entering a new nucleus of the Italian cartographic production, because this map we are looking at is by Paul Vidal de la Blache and refers to the school mural cartography production. The date is unknown, but this map was acquired in 1922. Sorry, there is a mistake right here, in not 2022, but 1922, at the Cabinet of Geography of the Royal University of Rome, together with other two maps of the British Islands. It shows the distribution of the European colonies in the African continent and the trade routes of the products exported from the African continent. So we can read right here diamonds or gold, sugar, coffee, cotton, and so on. So with the 20 years of the fascist period, Italy entered a new phase, a phase of strong colonization, or tried to, which obviously also passed through the symbols of cartography. And the map could be certainly converted as a symbol of power. So entrusting it to a government office means putting a precise message into the hands of who hold that power and want to pass a message, a certain message on the population, on the masses. So it's not a coincidence that the fascist regime set up a cartographic office, this cartographic office in 1912, which in 1920 became the Cartographic Service under the Office for Studies and Propaganda, and Achille Dardano became its director in 1922. So the map, this map drawn up by Dardano for the Cartographic Service in 1928 is particularly significant for the power of symbolism, because the borders between Somalia and Ethiopia is not marked. So we should be aware of that. So in 1928, the date of this map, Somalia had already been an Italian colony for 20 years, while Ethiopia was just a destination of conquest. So it only became an Italian colony in 1936. So maybe this map can be read like an aspirations of the regime as reality, as Professor Boria said before. And in 1935, Paravia Publishing House published a map of East Africa, where it shows, as we said for the previous, as we seen for the previous map, not to represent the borders again between Somalia and Ethiopia, but to adopt the national flags. And flags are in fact an immediately symbol of and strongly linked to the patriotic aims of propaganda carried out by Mussolini for Italy. And by then having become an Italian colony, Ethiopia appears in this atlas signed by Assunto and Alberto Morri in 1936. And we can distinguish the colonies with purple borders of the newly formed Italian East Africa in the Horn of Africa. that grouped all Italian possession in that piece of the continent. And the map also shows the subdivision of the Ethiopia into its 6 governorates. And this map also allows us to duel on the representation of toponymy and its power as well, which the fascist regime combined in its project of forced Italianization. So, for example, in this map we can read Colonia del Kenya. So they decided to use the letters C, H, and I in an Italian form. Instead of the Swahili original form, Kenya. So instead of using K and Y, they use this kind of written. Looking at this map, we also duel on the economic theme, which highlights in red letters the resources exported from Eritrea, for example, were exported coffee, leather, salt, and so on, while textiles, machines, and charcoal were imported in this colony. So in the meanwhile, in different colors, in green colored, we can read the resources present in that territory. So, for example, on the coast, mother of pearl, sharks, but also mules, sheep, cattle, etc. Another important nucleus of our review that we are analyzing today is represented by geographical school books. This is by Schirolo and Morri, published in 1905. And in this atlas, for example, we can read the distances between the colonies' capitals and 2 Italian cities like Naples and Syracuse. Giotto Dainelli, another important geographer of the last century, highlights in this school book some photographs, and this is one of them, aiming a large vineyard where it was previously deserted, so making use of the positive impact of flourishing colonization in a previously arid land. And to the founder of the empire, al fondatore dell'impero, is dedicated the Atlas of Africa, this atlas, another Atlas of Africa by Achille Dardano and Riccardo Riccardi. Riccardo Riccardi was another professor in Sapienza who replaced Roberto Almagià during the fascist period under the racial laws. In this atlas, we find in the very first pages the map of Libya and Italian East Africa. So emblematic in this atlas is the cover and the choice they made in the cover, using black color for the African continent, maybe because of the colors of skin, but above all, because of the fascists present, not only with the black shirts, not only on the Italian colonies, but on the entire continent. So we keep our attention right here, focusing the power of propaganda and the power of visual geography. Another atlas is that one by Giuseppe Pennesi, published by Peravia as well in 1942. And in this atlas, the map of Italian East Africa, you can observe on the right hand of this slide, is not located immediately after Italy cartography, but is located in the map section of Africa, maybe because we are at the end of the fascist period. We are in 1942, and the things were changed. So we conclude this focus, our atlases of Italian production with a French one by Dubois and Serin, published in 1914, that shows Egypt et Abyssine with some Italian colonies right here. And Marcel Dubois is also the founder, together with Paul Vidal de la Blache, of the Annales de Géographie, the most representative journal of the French geographical school even today. So the amount of maps dating back to the post-fascist period, so post the Second World War, in our possession decreases significantly, and these maps have a simple illustrative or didactic function. So two internships conducted on the reconnaissance of the world maps kept in our library in Sapienza have led to emergence of small-scale maps like these two you are looking at. So for the purely didactic production of this period, there is also an institutional explanation. So now those government bodies deputed, for example, for the ministry, for the administration of colonies, the Italian publishing houses, such as the Agostini and Paravia, remain active in map production and decline their production for illustrative
Scusi, dobbiamo andare a chiudere perché siamo lunghi.
Sì, sto finendo. Our cartographies support to be scientific, not explicitly propagandistic, but so our production is properly scientific, and they haven't a theatrical tones maybe. But the survey carried out on diachronic axes started with the 19th century maps, necessary to understand the preparation of the ground for later cartography. So it's indeed, finally, I'll finish, to see the evolution of cartography that goes hand in hand not only with colonial conquests. So you can compare these two maps you're looking at on this slide. So on the left side, you're looking at map of Italian possessions in Africa by Giuseppe Della Vedova, drawn up in 1895, and on the right hand you can observe a map by Istituto Geografico de Agostini dated back in 1941. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for traveling with us across our Sapienza Heritage. And sorry for the late.
Thank you, Benedetta, for your rich presentation, your significant survey of our evidences in Sapienza. So we have to move quickly to next speech. Patrizia Pampana and Filiberto Ciaglia of the Italian Geographical Society, and we have a first part here in presence, and then we can move on the ground floor to visit a little exhibition of the documents that Patrizia and Filiberto are going to show us. Thank you.
Ancora prima? No, non comincia così. Allora. Ok, ma intanto comincio, dai. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Patrizia Pampana, and I am the head of the library and the archives of the Italian Geographical Society. My contribution will focus on the cultural heritage that the Institute has gathered in its 155 years of activity, and that today is conserved in its different sectors: library, maps archive, photographic archive, and historical archive, to be used by scholars and constantly enhanced through activities and initiatives such as exhibitions, conferences, projects, also international. It consists of over 400,000 volumes, a considerable part of which includes ancient and rare works published between the 16th and 19th centuries. More than 205,000 maps, the oldest of which is a nautical map handmade on parchment dating back to 1480. 400,000 phototypes, including positives, negatives, slides, old postcards, and films. The historical archive keeps the entire documentation produced by the Institute since foundation: letters, reports, and travel notebooks, drawings made by explorers and travelers. Starting from the above-mentioned collections, it's possible to illustrate the role and responsibility of geographers in reading the history, analyzing some particular moments, and interpreting the changes of the society associated with them. Geographic and cartographic heritage, visual sources, are cultural products, but also they are tools to increase geographical awareness and knowledge. Publications such as the Bollettino and the Memorie, published without interruption from the institution foundation until today, even during the period of wars, are of considerable help in reconstructing the context in which geographical thought was articulated and developed. In reference to the title of this edition of the summer school, The Cultural Heritage and the Memory of the Totalitarianism, and according to the themes of the lessons, my opinion is that it's interesting to present the Migliorini collection, with particular regard to the foundation cities in Italy and worldwide. Among the several collections kept in the photographic archive, the Fondo Migliorini is of considerable value. It's composed largely of study materials, notes, and correspondence for a period that spans over the entire activity of the geographer. The photographic collection includes about 7,500 positives and negatives, to which are added 18,000 vintage postcards donated in 1992 to the Geographical Society. Elio Migliorini was an eminent geographer, Esperantist, and academic, brother of the better-known linguist Bruno. His name and teaching activities are linked to the Rome University, to the Naples Universities, Federico II and L'Orientale. He represented the geographers at the Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche, was part of the Accademia dei Lincei as a corresponding member and as a national member. The Geographical Society appointed him as an honorary member in 1972, and shortly before his death, awarded him the gold medal. He was promoter and president of the Associazione Italiana Insegnanti di Geografia. Together with Riccardo Riccardi and Roberto Almaggià, he was on the Consiglio Direttivo of the Italian Geographical Society. From 1928 to 1947, he was editor of the Bollettino, which he edited in parallel with the compilation of the Bibliografia Geografica della Regione Italiana. After the Second World War, Migliorini obtained the Libera Docenza and became one of the most authoritative exponents of the Italian geography. For this reason, he increased his production of essays and handbook publications. To this publishing activity, he linked also the organization of field researches, promotion of conferences, and geographical excursions. Our case study will include the analysis of the photographic series related to Agropontino, extracted from the wider collection Località e centri abitati del Lazio. Photographs, maps, and the rich bibliography show the interest of the geographers in the analysis of the urban phenomenon associated with the work of hydraulic rehabilitation and the integral announcement of the Agropontino. Many geographers devoted their studies to what can be called a typical pioneer region, identified by a very precise political economy will, supported by technical and financial means to allow or even impose the capture of mankind of areas where the environmental conditions are unfavorable. The bibliography and cartography production on this subject are consistent. In the 3 volumes entitled Gli uomini e il loro spazio, letture geografiche per la scuola media, edited in Rome in 1942, Migliorini illustrates geography and related themes through the works of important geographers, proposing text extracted from other monographic works and geographical serials. Each topic, including the reclamation of the Pontine marshes and the construction of the first new cities, is explained with maps and illustrations. At the end of each chapter, there are questions and exercise to check the level of learning. The photographs used in most cases have been included into the Migliorini collection, now preserved in Geographical Society. As you can see in the slide on the monitor, the variety of photographic collection present in the Geographical Society provide evidence of the Italian architecture and urban planning in different cities of the Mediterranean through the centuries. In the Sala del Consiglio, on the first floor of the Palazzetto, a selection of these original documents from the archives has been prepared, and you can visit them at the end of the session. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you to Professor Morri for giving me the opportunity to talk with you this morning. I'm Filiberto Ciaglia, PhD student in geography at the Department of Literature and Modern Cultures in Sapienza University of Rome. The topic of my speech is not the main topic of my research project, but I worked here for 2 years with Patrizia, and I have known the peculiarities of our of our heritage in Italian Geographical Society. So on the occasion of this summer school, I'm going to introduce you some aspect about an interesting topic inscribed on the main theme of the school, in particular with the connection between totalitarianism and representation of the space, and in general in the relationship between the Italian totalitarianism and the construction of the power through the space, through the conquest. Today we will focus on a singular experience of the Italian colonization in the Italian East Africa, the Villaggio Duca degli Abruzzi. We are in Somalia, as Professor Boria said before. Italian colonialism at its core in the Horn of Africa. 3 of 4 Italian colonies were located there. I'm speaking about Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Libya was considered the fourth shore of Italy because of its proximity to the Italian peninsula. Coming back to Somalia, that is the core of my speech, despite its peaceful situation, Somalia was undeveloped in terms of infrastructures and job opportunities. The problem was that there were no private investors who could support the development of the colony. In fact, the Colonial Congress of Rome in 1919 focused on the need of exploration of the country, in particular of the Webi Shebeli region. Webi Shebeli is the most important river of the country. Because at the beginning of 20s, Italy actually controlled only the coastal areas. The main character of my speech is a particular personality of the time, the Duke of the Abruzzi, Luigi Amedeo di Savoia. He was a member of the Savoy family, and he was a famous explorer. He was the son of King Amadeus of Spain, and we have to remember some biographical notes, in particular relating to his explorations. In 1897, the Duke was the first to ascend Mount St. Elia in Alaska, 5,000 meters. And then we have to remember his Arctic expedition in 1899, when he reached the latitude of 86 degrees, a record for the time. In 96, he was the first to climb the highest mountains of Rwenzori Range in the East Central Africa, and in 99, he tried to climb the K2 Karakorum, the second highest mountain of the world. During World War I, he held a naval command in the Adriatic Sea until 1917, and then he was later involved in exploration and colonization in Italian Somaliland. So we are talking about the last part of his life. But the Duke of the Abruzzi has been in Somalia for the first time in 1893, when he was a naval officer on the Italian gunboat Volturno. And on that occasion, he had to support the Italian Royal Navy ship Staffetta in suppressing an uprising in the city of Merca. Then he returned in Somalia for a short stay between 1918 and 1919, 5 months, during which the experts studied the flow rate of the Webi Shebeli River and analyzed in general the land. Back in Italy, Luigi Amedeo di Savoia presented his plan to Luigi Rossi, that at the time was the Minister for the Colonies, and around 1920 founded the Italy-Somali Agricultural Society, SAIS, with the project of an experimental agricultural colony that will be concretized in the building of the Villaggio Duca degli Abruzzi. That was a big settlement today called Jawar, in the Webi Shebeli region of Somalia. And he considered the colony as a modern independent village. So between 1921 and 1923, the size built the essential structures of the village that was officially inaugurated on June 1922. As I said before, the village was organized in a very innovative way, with an hospital, with a church, a mosque, 2 different graveyards, one Catholic and one Muslim, a post office, a cinema, pharmacy, and also meteorological station. The main problem was obviously the problem connected with to the agricultural activities. So the Scavoni River underwent adjustments to irrigate the fields of the first parcels of the land, and the sites focused on planting in particular cotton and sugarcane, sesame and corn to be exported. So there was also a problem related to the export, because regarding the condition of the roads, the Duke highlighted their fundamental importance to link the inland part of the country, where we have the village and the harbors, in particular Mogadiscio. The need of water for the irrigation is the reason of the last expedition of the Duke of the Abruzzi that took place between September 1928 and February 1929, but his health conditions were already deteriorated because of a prostate cancer he was suffering. So he had to come back in Italy, where he underwent surgical operation, and then he ended his life in Villaggio degli Abruzzi. That's an important thing. It's his choice to die in Somalia instead of Italy. We can now analyze some pictures in the historical archive of Italian Geographical Society. We can find pictures of Villaggio Duca degli Abruzzi in the historical collection De Vecchi. Cesare Maria De Vecchi was the governor of Somalia between 1923 and 1928. Like the other uncomfortable people, for Benito Mussolini, because Cesare Maria De Vecchi was one of the quadriumvirs of the March to Rome. Mussolini, he was sent away. Cesare Maria De Vecchi was sent away from Italy, before as governor of Somalia and then as governor of the islands of Dodecanneso. The pictures of Villaggio Duca degli Abruzzi that we can find in Italian Geographical Society are connected in particular to the agricultural activities and in general to the works in the colony. In this picture, you can see a part of the Scavoni River near the colony. Here we have the pumping station. This station was used in particular for lifting water during the works of reclamation of rivers, but also for lakes. And it was used also for removing stagnant water from the ground. Then we have an interesting picture, because we can notice the explosion of an antil. In Italian we say termitaio. The use of explosives was practiced by experts also for the large reclamations that were taking place in Italy in the same years in our territories. Then we have a number of people working on the land leveling. This kind of work was very important for preparing the agricultural activities, and obviously this work, as in this case, was easier when the ground was marshy. Here we can see a lot of people and the works of construction of canal for size. And then the last picture is about the work of cotton that was transported to the storage of the village. So now we can go downstairs to watch together the pictures of Collection De Vecchi and the other books. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Patrizia. Thank you, Filiberto. So before go downstairs, if are there any questions for our speakers?
I guess a couple of words because sort of remarks. Interesting. Should I take the microphone? Well, okay, got you. Well, thank you very much for all these very interesting presentations, and it was extremely informative and compelling from many points of view. Just a couple of remarks I wanted to say, because yesterday we discussed together about the problem of education in a totalitarian regime, and 2 days ago we discussed also the economic aspects on how there were private companies were involved in a regime, and we described how especially with Boria's presentation, I found it very interesting how they canceled out the boundaries between the African states, colonies, and an independent state, even before the actual political actual invasion of Ethiopia. So, in order to legitimize in the minds of the readers of the Italian audience a conquest that was not legitimate, because of course Ethiopia was part of the Society of Nations back then. But besides that, I found it very compelling how these private companies that were organizing space in an effective way, the space, of course, of Africa, the space of conquest for the fascist regime, were going towards, without any specific pressure, towards what the regime wanted, which is not to say typical of a totalitarian regime, but part of how even private companies were probably compelled to be part of this endeavor without any specific push from top down. Of course, if you were producing maps that were prone to the political agenda of the regime, you can then sell these maps and have these maps employed in schools, in other institutions, and so on and so forth. And I think this is very interesting because it's something that has been very little studied. We always think about, okay, propaganda push top down and like political agendas, but how a totalitarian regime had different means to pressure and its political agendas. I found it very fascinating, and I can just besides this remark, I would like to know if I'm very interested in how the cartography, geography, in a way was following, even anticipating the political dicta of Mussolini in this specific case. And if you have any comments about that.
Thank you. Edoardo, maybe you may add something.
Well, I completely agree. There are situations where you do.
Edoardo, alza il microfono. Il tuo.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Okay, fine. I was saying there are situations where you do not need to give orders, but you just have people doing what you want because of the social atmosphere where you are. So totalitarian regimes, they produce a social atmosphere where people do even more. In Italian we say più realisti del re, more than what the regime itself is expecting. So I thank for the remarks and agree with what have been said.
Thank you, Edoardo.
Thank you. I was just wondering if the idea of the frontiera, of the frontier, became more prominent as opposed to the idea of the national border with the fascist period.
Oh, okay. I can go. I can try to answer. The question is the construction of the imperial idea, and there are two questions. How Italy goes out from the First World War, and so the necessity to building a new idea of new borders, and I think that the speech of Marco Maggioli said us these needs from external and an internal perspective, because the difference that Marco showed us about the internal movements as the result of specific politic of control the migratory flows, so that there was also a problem of internal boundaries. And then there's the projection of imperial idea on the boundaries. The difference between what is internal and external is very questionable from a political point of view. And also the question, as are underlined in Franco, is strictly connected, because he's there's a paradox that in this period there's a season of geographical literacies that our country doesn't know in the following periods, but because the idea is to recognize a common territory. There's a continuity from the birth of a new kingdom, the recent birth of a new kingdom, and then the necessity to legitimize the existence of this kingdom from a territorial point of view, and then the imperial projection of the fascism to extend these boundaries, and is a mortal connection, is a deadly connection. Okay, thank you. So I think we can go downstairs with Filiberto and Patrizia. And grazie Edoardo, grazie Benedetta.